What happened when you got to New York City?
The Serpapinto, I just remember the name of the ship. It was called the Serpapinto. We were put into the Jewish Foster Home Bureau had a set of buildings in Pleasantville, New York, which is upstate from New York. Pleasantville or Pleasantown, I remember, I forget now. And it was a bunch of houses, 2 or 3 level houses, that there were other orphans or homeless young people. And on the, we had bunks, and on the weekends, people, primarily Jewish people from the greater New York area, would come there and talk to you and look at you. And there was a whole drive going on in the early 40s to take children into your homes, children, American children or foreign children who were refugees coming into the country.
And they would come kind of shopping for kids?
Correct. It was. I always thought of them as if they were going to a pet shop, and I had nothing against these people, but I was a very, from what I've been told, because when you're young, I don't think you know that you're a bad kid or you're mean or you're arrogant. But from what I've been told, I wasn't the most pleasant young fella. I also believe the dreams that I heard about the Americas, that the streets shine, you know, and things are free. I wasn't the gentlest of young people, and I think I was probably a bitter young person, having come off that trip. And on weekends, couples would come up to look at us. And that period of time was one of the real unpleasant ones. Because a week would go by, and I'd see somebody said, I'm going to go with these people. And then the paperwork took place, but there was some joy in somebody or some buddies. And another week, and another week. And I was there over 2 months.
And no one took you?
And no one was that interested in, for whatever the reasons were.
Do you remember?
Oh, God.
This is probably unpleasant for you, but do you remember feeling rejected, that people just didn't want you?
Not only did I feel it, I knew why I was feeling it, because I wasn't, I think I must have been a pretty hard kid. I could not try to impress somebody. I didn't want to impress them with this lovely, meek young boy. And not then, but sometime later, because I stayed friendly with 2 or 3 of the other kids, and they told me that that I didn't put out, so to speak. I didn't work at impressing anybody. And naturally, I didn't feel too good when people left. It was like escaping. Because it was my first real experience with regimentation. That I had certain hours then, we ate at a certain time, and there really was no schooling, so to speak. There was someone there who gave us some books to look at and basic English. This was the other problem. I spoke only the English that I learned in a couple of days or the first few weeks I was here. I spoke perfect French and perfect German. And in the beginning of the 3rd month, somewhere in the 3rd month, a couple came that lived in the Bronx, an American couple, and they had a boy with them who was 2 years older, and he was going to the High School of Science in the Bronx. And as fate would have it, his 2 main interests in life at that particular time were languages, and he was studying French and German. And I don't think they thought too much of me at the time, but they did like the fact that all I could speak was French and German. Well, the end result of that was that they decided that they would like to take me with them.
Did they adopt you?
No, I was never legally adopted, because at that time my mother, the last I'd heard from my mother was in '39, but in 1941 when I got here, I did not know her whereabouts, and I had hoped that she was alive, and I certainly wasn't going to have myself adopted if my mother was still alive. So I just went to live with these people, very, very nice people, especially Mrs. Ehrenreich, this lady, who was if there was anybody that I would have to say saved me somewhere along the line or gave me a shot, if I had to pick one person, it would be this woman whose home I went into with, her husband and their son, Roy, who is in New York, who's still my brother, we're still very close. But at the time that I went to live in the Bronx, I was 11 years old. I arrived in the United States and I weighed 45 pounds. And I was rather wrinkled and a little decrepit young fella. And especially in the first year, and 2 months after I got here, the war broke out and rationing and whatnot. And I have very, very strong memories of this woman giving me the bulk of what there was in the house, food, rubbing me in alcohol and olive oil, especially my legs. I had bad legs.
Is this the first time that someone had really paid attention to you in a sense of a female personally putting hands on, touching, and making you feel better after a long period of feeling bad?
I think so. I never looked at it that way. I would imagine so. I just liked this woman. She seemed to be doing whatever she was doing for me with no request for anything in return. And I don't think I gave anything. I always felt bad about that in the first few years because I was more concerned about getting. I wanted to get well. I remember the first year being the hardest because I wasn't too healthy. But as I said, 2 months after I got here, the war between the United States declared war on Germany and Japan. And I went to school because I couldn't speak the language. I was in there with 7, 8-year-olds, and I was 11 because I couldn't speak the language. And pretty much on a daily basis, I would come home and either in school, in the schoolyard, or on the way home, or prior to the time I got to my house, there would be fights, because to young people, I wasn't a Jew, I wasn't a refugee, I was German, therefore I was a Nazi, therefore I was on their side, and therefore I was the enemy, and we're going to beat up the enemy. And ironically, that was the reason why, and my brother and I, after school, just had these daily gymnastics. We finally got the idea through my brother that what we have to do is not only teach the way I speak now, it's not as dirty, but I spoke I spoke the language pretty well without the accent. And ironically, the 2 people that I stayed in touch with for a number of years after that still speak like this. "How's the ball, please?" They still speak like this. And I did it as a means of survival. I was very grateful that these kids hated me because I would never have lost my accent, I don't think.